Welcome to 每周报. This is an interview debate relay pay gap between men and women. Part 2. Happened on January 16, UK Channel 4. The host is凯西纽曼. The guest is Canada clinical psychologist and Professor Jordan Peterson. I just like to let Asia know what happened in the Western from my viewpoint. So let's hear about it within this video.
You have to say why it exists.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman...
Not necessarily.
And on average, you're getting paid 9% less than a man. That's not fair, is it?
It depends on why it's happening. I can give you an example. Okay. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than less agreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men.
Again, a vast generalization. Some women are not more agreeable than men.
Yes, that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you were saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve.
No, I'm saying that that's one component of a multivariate equation that predicts salary. It accounts for maybe 5% of the variance, something like that.
So surely
you
the
need about
answer...
you need about another 18 factors, one of which is gender. And there is prejudice, there's no doubt about that, but it accounts for a much smaller proportion of the variance in the pay gap than the radical feminists claim.
Okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, which is what you did at the beginning of this conversation, shouldn't you say to women, rather than being agreeable and not asking for a pay rise, go and ask for a pay rise? Make yourself disagreeable with your boss.
Oh, definitely, there's that. But I also didn't deny it existed. I denied it existed because of gender.
Holy moly! Why don't you just ask why there is a amount pay gap between women? For example, why you get to pay more than some other woman's job? Or you do just talk nonsense?
Okay.
See, because I'm very, very, very careful with my words.
So the pay gap exists, you accept that, but you're saying, I mean, the pay gap between men and women exists, but you're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. So
it's one of the reasons.
Okay, one of the reasons. So why not get them to ask for a pay rise?
I've done that,
I've done that
many, many times in my career.
And they just
I've counseled. Oh, they do it all the time. So one of the things that you do as a clinical psychologist is assertiveness training. So you might say, often you treat people for anxiety, you treat them for depression, and maybe the next most common category after that would be assertiveness training. And so I've had many, many women, extraordinarily competent women in my clinical and consulting practice, and we put together strategies for their career development that involve continual pushing, competing for higher wages, and often tripled their wages within a 5-year period, teaching them how to negotiate. That? Of course.
So do you agree that you would be happy if that pay gap was eliminated completely? Because that's all the radical feminists are saying.
It would depend on how it was eradicated and how the disappearance of it was measured.
And you're saying if it's at the cost of men, that...
See? You see? When there is a problem, how we as women push problems away from our own responsibility to men.
That's a problem.
Oh, there's all sorts of things that it could be at the cost of. It could even be at the cost of women's own interests. So
because they might not be happy if they get equal pay.
No, because it might interfere with other things that are causing the pay gap that women are choosing to do.
Like having children.
No. I know some very young American women, almost in legal immigration, have figured out the benefit of having children in Western society. What I try to say that they want the children on the purpose to get social benefit rather than thinking about the duty of being parent, which causes a big problem nowadays. The worst part is ill kids getting more benefits than healthy kids. Could you imagine that? And why are there so many disabilities kids in the Western than other countries? It's not there is no free pregnancy checkout system. It's they don't want to lose the free paycheck.
Well, or choosing careers that actually happen to be paid less, which women do a lot of.
But why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children, or the right to choose those?
What a bold-faced lie! Are you seriously saying that? White women don't have the right to not have children?
do. They can. Yeah, that's fine.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying no, I'm not saying that. And I actually haven't said that so far.
You're
in the
saying
program.
it makes them miserable.
No, I
at the
said that
beginning.
what was making them miserable was having weak partners. That makes them miserable.
Right.
I would say that many women around the age of, I would say between 28 and 32, have a career family crisis that they have to deal with. And I think that's partly because of the foreshortened time frame that women have to contend with. Like, women have to get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up. So because for the typical woman, she has to have her career and family in order pretty much by the time she's 35, because otherwise the options start to run out. And so that puts a tremendous amount of stress on women, especially at the end of their 20s.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman because, you know, all women are different. And that's what I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well,
You
they're
say,
different in some ways and the same in others.
okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Oh,
And
yes.
you talked in one of your YouTube interviews about crazy harpy sisters. So, simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
It depends on what you mean by equality. No,
Being
if you
treated
mean that
fairly,
men and women
getting
are
the same opportunities?
fairly, we could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already.
No again. No. It was very fair maybe a decade ago. But since I have been living here in a Western society almost 10 years, from my point of view, that is less fair to men compared with women. For example, one case is a man who qualified for the job asking for 80,000 and a woman also qualified for the job asked for 50,000. Another case is they both asking 80,000 and the company would definitely choose the woman in both cases because it's benefit for company paying less or getting a society credit for hiring a woman. Am I right?
But we could.
Well, they're
improve
really
that.
not, though, are they? I mean, otherwise, why
depends.
would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK? Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've
Oh, well, that's
discussed at
easy.
length?
It's easy to
Why are
answer
women
that
at the
question.
BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job?
Well,
That's not fair,
Well,
is
let's
it?
go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. Seven women. Repeat that one. There's only
7 women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay. Well, the
I mean,
first
that's not
question
fair.
might be, why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it? I
Well,
mean, it's a lot of
there's
money. It's an interesting
there's a
job,
certain
you know?
number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work. These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, nonstop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that because it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so I work
So
for...
you don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top?
Yes. The barriers are now caused by those feminists degrading women's value and credibility. Because who knows, you are a whiny feminist or a real employee who is willing to follow the company's rule when it comes to a job task.
Oh, there are
those
some
companies.
barriers, yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise. And the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, please take the position.
So let me come back to my
absolute
question.
all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia. Because in Scandinavia...
What do you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. I've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme, and approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many disciplines, and they're doing great. So
let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on
So
who
you don't
defines
believe
it.
in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark
That's
ages
because they're actually
here?
not listening.
Oh, no, Jordan Peterson, you are wrong this time. In order to distortion someone's words, become certain meaning they want, which takes skills and ball to do that, okay?
I'm
They're just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms. Equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't
If I
say
was
that.
a young
said that
woman
equal-
watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls
I
and give
didn't
up
say
trying
that.
at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want because
said
there's
that
someone sitting there saying it's not possible
I
and it's
said
not
that
desirable,
equal
it's going to make
outcomes
you
aren't
miserable.
desirable. That's what I said. It's a
Yeah,
bad
it's not
social
desirable.
goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
The
think that's-
patriarchal
I
system
really
is
think
just
that's
fine.
silly. I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have
How do
battled
you
quite
manage
hard
it?
to get where I've got
Exactly.
to.
Good
So that's
for you.
okay. Battling is good. This is all
It's
about the fight.
inevitable.
But you talk about men
Why
fighting. I mean,
would
let me
you
just
have-
put another thing to you from the book.
Why
You're
wouldn't
saying
you have to
real...
battle for a high-quality position?
Uh-oh, I gonna get you to help your woman group. May you pull your own salary become equal pay with other women who also work in the channel for first. How about that? Oh no, maybe you should just ask the top 7 female CEO to execute the equal pay starting from their own salary. That's a better idea.
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real conversations between men containing, quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
No, Jordan Peterson, you are wrong again. Have you heard about the Asian saying, better than the devil you know, than the devil you do not know? Women are like the devils you do not know, which means women have found a way to be the hidden arrow. Okay? The most Western women don't like to face the fight, but they will get you bad one way or another. Well, what do I know? I'm here in a Western society a decade only. I still don't understand many points of view. But I have a right. Freedom of speech, right?
Well, you
It's
just said
rather
that I've
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
What does that make me?
well,
a
I
sort of
don't
proxy
imagine.
man or
I
something?
don't imagine that you. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women. I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have a
sure it
joke about it.
served your career well.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers, in your view. They have to sort of become men to succeed, is what you're saying.
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed,
if they're
therefore
going to
I'm an
compete
honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits so that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises? It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the same pay.
Well, I would say partly because it's not so easy to determine what constitutes the same job.
But that's because, arguably, there are still men dominating our industries, our society, and therefore they've dictated the terms for so long that women have to battle to be like the men.
No, it's not true. It's not true. So, for example,
where's the evidence?
Well, I can give you an example very quickly. So I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But the market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No, it's not. It's not. The market is dominated by women. They make 80% of the consumer decisions. That's not the case at all.
If you're talking
80%.
about people who stay at home looking after children, by and large, they are still women. So they're going out doing the shopping. But that is changing.
They make all the consumer decisions.
Okay, so
the market is driven by women, not men.
Right.
Okay, and if you're a lawyer in Canada...
And they still pay more for the same sort of goods. That's been proven, that men, you buy a blue bicycle helmet, it's going to cost less than a pink one. Anyway, we'll come on to that.
It's partly because men are less agreeable. Right, so they won't put up with it.
I want to ask you, is it not desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits. Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have been a banking crisis.
They don't predict success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace. And so does high negative emotion.
You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No, I didn't say that at all.
You said that female traits don't predict success.
But I didn't say that intelligence wasn't. I didn't say that intelligence and conscientiousness.
Well, you were saying that intelligence and conscientiousness
traits.
By implication are not female traits.
No.
I mean, that's very dangerous territory.
I'm not saying that at all.
Are women less intelligent than men, by and large?
No, they're not. No, the data on that's pretty clear. The average IQ for a woman and the average IQ for a man is identical. There is some debate about the flatness of the distribution, which is something that James Damore pointed out, for example, in his memo, but there's no difference at all in general cognitive ability. There's no difference to speak of in conscientiousness. Women are a bit more orderly than men, and men are a little bit more industrious than women, but the difference isn't big. But that averages into conscientiousness.
Plenty of men who aren't necessarily as
industrious.
Well,
of course.
But female traits, though, why are they not...
Feminine traits.
Why are they not desirable at the top of... Feminine traits, why are they not desirable at the top of business?
It's hard to say. I'm just laying out the empirical evidence. Like we know the traits that predict success.
But we also know, because companies by and large have not been dominated by women over the centuries, we have nothing to compare it to.
Oh my God. Casey, you are finally saying something true and useful. Now you made me wonder if you are too smart to face against the feminist group. So you fool yourself to show the public how ridiculous a feminist claim. I have to say that's a very, very brilliant strategy. You know, in fact, you won't lose either way. But this reversing strategy awakens more silent people. Good job.
It's an experiment.
True, and it could be the case that if companies modified their behavior and became more feminine, that they would be successful. But there's no evidence for it. I'm neither doubtful nor non-doubtful. There's no evidence for it.
So why not give it a go, as the radical
feminists would say? Because the evidence suggests, well, it's fine. If someone wants to start a company and make it more feminine and compassionate, let's say, and caring in its overall orientation towards its workers and towards the marketplace, then that's a perfectly reasonable experiment to run. My point is that there is no evidence that those traits predict success in the workplace. And there's
because it's never been tried.
Well, that's not really the case. Women have been in the workplace for at least ever since I've been around. The representation of women in the workplace has been about 50%. So we've run the experiment for a fairly reasonable period of time, but not, certainly not for centuries.
Uh-oh. I guess Jordan Peterson lost the patience to hear his words being distortion over and over. Just like I said, that's mental torture when someone distortions your words constantly.
Let me move on to another debate that's been very controversial for you. And this is, you got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No, that's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government. I actually never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't happen.
You wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed
Not
to
once it was
outlaw
law.
discrimination.
No.
Why
Well,
should
that's what
your-
they said it was designed to do.
Okay, you cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Kathy must think if she overplays the bad guy. Hopefully, Jordan Peterson will maintain his decency to complete this interview without being too alpha. Otherwise, the sacrifice will be nothing.
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I've exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
And that is what you should do. But
and
you're
you
exercising
see-
your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
Ha, gotcha.
you have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work
about
that through in my
time.
head. Yeah. It took a while.
It did, yeah.
Took a while. You have voluntarily come into the studio and agreed to be questioned.
Mhm.
A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called.
And that's never
she.
happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said.
You've
And then
also-
the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you'd mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that
Well,
grossly
only in the
insen-
broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian,
Yes,
which
but
they are.
You're saying someone who's trying to work out their gender identity, who may well have struggled with that, had quite a
No
tough
doubt
time
have
over the
struggled
years.
with it, yeah.
You're comparing them with, Chairman Mao, who
Well, I think that's very good comparison because Mao also used teenagers' ignorance to divide the society. Those regard even kill their own family. Think about that.
No, just the
saw the
activists.
deaths of millions of people. Well,
Just the
even if the
activists.
activists, they're trans people too. They have a right to say these things.
Yeah, but they don't have
Isn't
a
it
right to
grossly
speak for their whole
insensitive
community.
to compare them to Chairman Mao or, Pinochet, Augusto Pinochet. I mean, this is grossly insensitive.
No, I
isn't it?
didn't compare them to Pinochet.
Well,
I did compare
he
them to
was an
Mao.
authoritarian.
He's a
wasn't he?
right-winger, though. I was comparing them to the left-wing totalitarians. And
Okay,
I do believe they are left-wing totalitarians.
Under Mao, millions of people died. I
Right.
mean, there's no comparison between
That's-
Mao and a trans activist, is there?
Why not?
Because trans activists aren't killing millions of people?
The philosophy that's guiding their utterances is the same philosophy.
The consequences are...
Not yet.
You're saying that trans activists
No.
could lead to the deaths of millions of people? What
No,
they're
I'm
doing-
saying that the philosophy that drives their utterances is the same philosophy that already has driven us to the deaths of millions of people.
Okay, tell us how that philosophy is in any way comparable.
Sure, that's no problem. The first thing is that the philosophy presumes that group identity is paramount. That's the fundamental philosophy that drove the Soviet Union and Maoist China. And it's the fundamental philosophy of the left-wing activists. It's identity politics. It doesn't matter who you are as an individual. It matters who you are in terms of your group identity.
You're just
That's
saying these
murderous-
things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean,
Not
you
a
are a
bit.
provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything-
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to. You want to stir things up.
I'm only a provocateur insofar as when I say what I believe to be true, it's provocative. I don't provoke. Maybe for
You don't
humor
set out to
now
provoke.
and then. I'm not interested in provoking.
But what
not in
about
the
the thing
least.
about, fighting and the lobster? Tell us about the lobster.
Is that wonderful? Great job, Kathy. still remember to promote his book, Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life.
Well, that's quite a segue. Well, the first chapter I have in my book is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And it's an injunction to be combative, not least to further your career, let's say, but also to adopt a stance of ready engagement with the world and to reflect that in your posture. And the reason that I write about lobsters is because there's this idea that hierarchical structures are a sociological construct of the Western patriarchy. And that is so untrue that it's almost unbelievable. And I use the lobster as an example because the lobster, we divulged from lobsters in evolutionary history about 350 million years ago, common ancestor. And lobsters exist in hierarchies, and they have a nervous system attuned to the hierarchy. And that nervous system runs on serotonin, just like our nervous systems do. And the nervous system of the lobster and of the human being is so similar that antidepressants work on lobsters. And it's part of my attempt to demonstrate that the idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with sociocultural construction.
Noted. The idea of hierarchy has absolutely nothing to do with social cultural construction. I hope Casey hears that clearly when she asks the next question again.
Which it doesn't.
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organize our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
I'm saying that it's inevitable that there will be continuity in the way that animals and human beings organize their structures. It's absolutely inevitable. And there is 1/3 of a billion years of evolutionary history behind that. Right? That's so long that 1/3 of a billion years ago, there weren't even trees. It's a long time. You have a mechanism in your brain that runs on serotonin that's similar to the lobster mechanism that tracks your status. And the higher your status, the better your emotions are regulated. So as your serotonin levels increase, you feel more positive emotion and less negative emotion.
So you're saying, like the lobsters, we're hardwired as men and women to do certain things, to sort of run along tram lines, and there's nothing we can do about it?
Oh no, see? We women jump to conclusion by treat others war again.
No, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it, because it's like in a chess game, right? There's lots of things that you can do, although you can't break the rules of the chess game and continue to play chess. Your biological nature is somewhat like that, is it sets the rules of the game, but within those rules you have a lot of leeway. But the idea that, one thing we can't do is say that hierarchical organization is a consequence of the capitalist patriarchy. It's like, that's patently absurd. It's wrong. It's not a matter of opinion. It's seriously wrong.
I have to say, because of the high tech today, humans pretty much can fight against nature as long as they want, or reconstruction their own body.
Aren't you just whipping people up into a state of anger and
Not at all.
Divisions between men and women?
Well, a suggestion to Kathy. You should just leave those words to the feminists who on the street violent, shout, indecent, totally degraded feminist image. As a woman, those women really just whip me up into a state of anger.
Any critics of you online get absolutely lambasted by your followers. You've
And
got to
by
call
me,
them off, haven't
generally.
you?
Wow, what a responsible response. Stand up behavior.
Sorry, your critics get lambasted by you. I mean,
If
isn't
they're
that
academics.
irresponsible?
Casey, did you know what's responsible?
Not at all. If an academic is going to come
Okay.
after me and tell me that I'm not qualified and that I don't know what I'm talking about,
So
like,
you're
it's
not going to say to
seriously
your
not the
followers
same.
now, quit the abuse, quit the anger.
Well, we'd need some substantial examples of the abuse and the anger before I could detail that question.
There's a lot of it out there.
Let's take a more general perspective on that. So I've had 25,000 letters since June, something like that, from people who told me that I've brought them back from the brink of destruction. And so I'm perfectly willing to put that up against the rather vague accusations that my followers are making the lives of people that I've targeted miserable.
Jordan Peterson, thank you.
My pleasure. Nice talking with you.
Kind of teasing, ironically. within the video because it's hard to listen to it without playing a mindset of it. I don't understand those feminists in the West today. Not why they are degree feminists value without feeling shame on themselves.